the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know about the association. On Wednesdays, I'm your usual co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I am John Corrales, Reds Army _John on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. And as I broadcast here from a hotel room in Dallas, Texas, host of the Thursday night Locked On NBA Draft live show. I was on a set at the WFAA studios already with Chad Ford, with Rafael Barlow of the Locked On NBA Draft podcast, which already, Jake, is one of the coolest things, because being on a set with Chad Ford getting ready to host live draft coverage is like the coolest moment of my career so far. It's on Thursday. It's brought to you by Built Bar, because of course it is. And we're going to be going from 7 p.m. Eastern through the draft, through the second round. So you're talking about probably about 4 hours of live coverage that you can stream on the YouTube and Locked On NBA YouTube channel, this channel here that you'd be watching on, and on Amazon Fire Stick, on Roku, all through the Tegna Watch apps, like all that, everywhere. So I'm so psyched on Thursday to be hosting that show. Hope everybody joins me for that.
Look, this is where Locked On gets to really shine, right? You know, we had the ultimate mock draft that I think is one of the more useful tools for people trying to get kind of like a high-level look at the draft, because, look, national media, I like them all. They're not kind of like boots on the ground when it comes to these teams, right? They don't know, say, the Celtics or the Pelicans as well as you and I do. It's just not feasible for them to do that. So getting our local experts on, reacting to the picks the moment after they happen to tell you, listener, like, what's going on? Why is this a good pick, a bad pick? What's it mean for the team, the league? It's great. You don't get that insight in anywhere else. And I've seen pictures of the set. It looks awesome. Like the production value's high. Like this isn't us doing this in like, you know, in a room or something like that.
No, it's out of the WFAA professional studios with, you know, using the power of Tegna, using the power of the local hosts, because we're going to get as many local hosts on as we can to talk about their picks. You'll know how they affect their team in specifically. You're just going to get a level of analysis that's not possible anywhere else. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You can have the draft on TV and second screen us and get this awesome analysis. I'm psyched. This is a huge moment for the network, and I'm very just thrilled and honored to be part of it.
Look, and it also gets no better than Chad Ford. And the other thing is, there's rumors flying right now around the NBA. It seems like half the league's going to get traded and it's going to be remade over the next week or so. And that's what we're going to cover in today's edition of Locked On NBA. This one's fun. We get all the big names. You want to know more about Kyle Lowry, where he may end up? We've got you covered. What about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander potentially on the move out of OKC? That one's kind of crazy, but it still makes some sense. Also, the Lakers are in a weird spot and need to figure out what they're trying to do. You throw Chris Paul into the mix. Look, let's just dive into everything, because this is where like the NBA just gets silly and a whole lot of fun. And I guess we can start with the Kyle Lowry situation, because that's the one where there's probably more smoke around everything. It's the type of guy that would make a difference and immediately take a team from kind of playoff contender to championship contender. That's why you saw the Lakers interested in him at the trade deadline. Same for the Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat. No deal got done though, but it feels like, unfortunately for Toronto, that he's going to be on the move and he's looking for a big payday, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the last big payday of his career. So you might as well maximize it while you can. He's one of the headline guys that could be available. So yeah, a lot of teams are lining up. I think there's a little bit of carryover Chris Paul effect going on here too.
Big time.
Lowry is a similar impact player. We've seen Lowry be, you know, obviously he's not quite what Chris Paul is, and they're certainly not exactly the same player, but you're looking at a veteran leader. Kyle Lowry has the benefit of having won a championship. We know how hard he plays. We know how passionate he is. We know how much he still has left in the tank. So teams are looking at him, much like Chris Paul in Phoenix. So yeah, line them up and let's see who wants to get Kyle Lowry, because the Raptors are in line to draft Jalen Suggs, who basically becomes the Kyle Lowry replacement. He's very similar, and you get him in, and who knows what happens as far as trades and trading and what you get in return, but you get a long-term replacement in Jalen Suggs on Thursday, and now you're cooking in the Kyle Lowry sweepstakes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? Like he could either sign as a free agent. There's teams that could could get him as a sign and trade, sending more assets or something in return to the Toronto Raptors as they kind of retool, rebuild, and to some degree. Look, the Pelicans just made that big trade with Memphis the other day, clearing cap space up to $36 million, clearly trying to kind of make a run at him or someone of his caliber. And at the Willie Green press conference today, they really talked a lot about the Phoenix Suns model and felt there was a blueprint for that here in New Orleans. It seems to make some sense that they would go after him. You look at a team like the Miami Heat, though, they would like to probably add a guy like him, maybe replacing Goran Dragic to kind of help them become a little bit closer to title contenders than they were last year and get back to what they looked at in the bubble. But this is like the first of many dominoes, right? If he comes to New Orleans, let's say, Lonzo Ball's certainly going to be on the move after that. And then that opens up kind of this revolving door of point guards to a certain degree, I think. If Lonzo goes to, say, the Heat, the Chicago Bulls or the New York Knicks, other teams miss out on him. Like things start to kind of fall and you see that domino effect start to come through.
Yeah, I know just from a Celtics perspective, they're looking to maybe see if Lonzo does do something like that, then you're poaching that next level and seeing if you can get Satoransky for nothing, because they're going to want to clear some money out. So it's not just where does Kyle Lowry land. It's this is very much like natural selection, and the vultures are going to come out and pick this carcass clean no matter what's left over. Wherever Lowry goes, there's going to be a backfill. There's going to be, Lonzo goes somewhere, somebody else is going to go and say, oh, well, you now need to get rid of Satoransky. Here comes Boston with a traded player exception that they have left over from Gordon Hayward. Now do you get that? And then who's left over from Boston? Does that mean that they change what they do? And does somebody become available? So it's a very strong trickle-down effect no matter what happens here. And the reason I bring up Kyle Lowry as far as a trade goes, because there are sign and trade options. There are teams that are capped out that are desperate for
the 76ers, right? Like they're a perfect example of that.
Right. And so there's still the possibility of now acquiring somebody via sign and trade does hard cap a team. So there's a little bit of a different element going on here, but that just increases the movement. You have to clear more salary in that regard, but there are teams that see Lowry as their missing piece, and it doesn't just have to be a team with cap space. There are teams out there that have some assets that might say, look, maybe you play on Kyle Lowry. Toronto plays on Kyle Lowry's, loyalty and say, hey, look, we get it. You want to go somewhere else. You want to go out the door. Hook us up. Do it as a sign and trade. Let us get a second round pick. Let us get this asset for you. We can send you to maybe a place that you want to go that didn't have the cap space. Kind of win-win, but you got to hook us up on the way out the door. So I think it's not just the teams that have the cap space that could be in play for Lowry. Every team that is missing a piece there at point guard has the potential to be in play for Lowry.
Well, and then if they whiff on him, because it seems like there's going to be a lot of musical chairs here when it comes to point guards, it opens up other doors like Colin Sexton from the Cleveland Cavaliers, who've been rumored to be kind of on the outs and could be had relatively cheap. Does a team maybe try and make a run at Malcolm Brogdon if they miss out on Kyle Lowry, a guy that could be gettable potentially from the Indiana Pacers? There's so much movement there that you might see, right? Like I can see you kind of working through it in your head right now, but it makes sense. Like there's a lot. It's musical chairs.
I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, are we going to have a season where every team has a different starting point guard this year? Is there's probably what, like 3 teams out there?
Feels like that.
Really, like seriously, there's only a handful of teams out there that you say, okay, yeah, that point guard's coming back. Everyone else, even when you think of, you thought OKC had their point guard of the future. Nope. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
No, we're going to talk about that. Okay, well, let's get into that one because that's the one I find maybe the most interesting, and we've got some kind of offers on the table with this. So we'll get that one. We'll get into that coming up next here, and then talk the Lakers and their situation a little bit more in the third segment. But John, today's show brought to us by Built Bar.
Yes, Built Bar, which there were 3 full boxes of Built Bars as set pieces on the Locked On NBA draft set. I'm hoping that as a parting gift, Chad, Raphael, and I each get one of those boxes to take home. That would be awesome because I love Built Bars. They are basically a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You go down the list of coconut, raspberry, double chocolate, salted caramel, cookies and cream. There's flavors there for everybody. And I only just named a few. So whatever your favorite is, you can go stock up. If you can't pick one, get an assorted box. Basically, what you're going to get is 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging between 130 and 180. So if you're on the treadmill, the elliptical, afterwards, if you have one, you didn't blow out all of the hard work that you did. And only 4 or 5 grams of sugar and 4 or 5 grams of net carbs. So go check it out. Built Bar, the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team, which is awesome as the Olympics are going on. So check out when track and field starts up. You might see these guys chowing down on some Built Bars themselves. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. That's LOCKED15 at built.com. Use it every single time. You're going to get 15% off your next order.
There you go. Also, mint brownie, my favorite flavor right there. It's like a mint chocolate chip ice cream, but in, healthy bar form for you. All right, so we just went over some of the big name point guards that could be on the move. Kyle Lowry, we didn't even touch on Damian Lillard, but I think everyone kind of knows that situation in what might happen there. But the name that really kind of surprised me at first and then started to make a whole lot of sense to me was seeing the rumor out there that the Oklahoma City Thunder have tried to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft from the Detroit Pistons and offered the 6th overall pick plus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. At first it was like, wait, he seemed like as untouchable of a player out there. But then you start to kind of look at that Oklahoma City situation where they had some real bad lottery luck in this draft. They had a chance to end up with like 2 top 3, top 4 picks. They ended up with the 6th overall pick. And while they're in prime position to rebuild with the millions of draft picks that it feels like they have, they're starting to get out of whack with Shai's timeline, I think, compared to the rest of what their roster might look like when those picks start to pay off. They needed a second guy to really pair with him to be on the exact same timeline, and they were hoping it would have been Cade Cunningham or one of the Jalens, let's say, in this draft. They didn't end up in that situation. And now when they get that kind of next blue chip prospect, because they're like right out of that range, I think, when it comes to this draft, it might be that all of a sudden Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is looking at his, 3rd contract instead of his 2nd, which they'll certainly offer him. But that's where it starts to get a little bit dicey for their rebuild, that yes, they have all of those picks, but those picks aren't going to pan out till 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And at that point, maybe Shai's tired of not winning and starts to angle out of there, and you start to lose that team control over him. So offering him to the Detroit Pistons, I think, makes some sense. Just on the surface of that, what's your take on it?
It's such an interesting position here because all I've been hearing lately is the argument for maybe not drafting Cade Cunningham, number 1, and how it's not as cut and dry, and how the gap between number 1 and number 2 and number 3 isn't as wide as some people want to make it out to be. And if that's true, and we don't know if that's true yet, then Detroit getting a guy that is as good as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which is a proven commodity, though you're getting him a little older. He's still a proven commodity.
A little bit, but like he's 23. Like he's still
sure, but he's not 19. He's not 20.
No,
that 3 years, it's just a little bit older. But he still hasn't hit his prime, certainly not yet. And everybody knows how great he looks already. So you say, hey, you got Killian Hayes, you got What do you got? Sadiq Bey. You got
Jeremy Grant.
Jeremy Grant, yes, obviously. And so you've got like these, and Grant's older too. So you've got these different guys on different timelines. Maybe they come together. I can see if you're getting Shai and what is it, 6th? Is that where OKC is?
6, yeah.
So if it's a 6-person draft and maybe you like Scotty Barnes, and maybe now that Scotty Barnes, some of the question marks around him don't bother you as much because you've got some of the things that he doesn't do well. You already fill in the blanks around there, and you can build around the things that he does do well. And maybe the upside kind of kicks in, and you get a real haul here. This could be a good move for Detroit, but Cade Cunningham is pretty locked, solid, number 1 pick. The worst case scenario from all accounts, I haven't found anybody that will say that the worst case scenario is that he flops completely and becomes, Anthony Bennett. His floor is really damn good player. And so you might as well, from the Detroit side, say, look, we got the number 1 pick. Let's just make the number 1 pick. Let's not mess around with it.
No, I think there's something to be said for that. As much as I think, Shai and 6 makes sense for Detroit, they probably still shouldn't do that. I think they're still thinking long term, and it's actually pretty smart team building, in my opinion, right? Don't kind of cash your chips in now to a degree. Get Shai, who I think is probably the best guard, second best guard under 25, more or less. That's how high I think of him. Like, I don't think that's like a hot take here or anything, But they're still thinking long term. They're still thinking, cool, we'll draft Cade. We have him under team control for 7 or 8 years. Whereas with Shai, you probably have 2 more before you really start, 2-3 more before you really start to get kind of nervous at that, because these timelines for these young guys wanting out from their current teams, if you're not winning, is very much more compressed in the past couple of years than it used to be. It's smart team building if you're Detroit, right? You don't get big name free agents there. Keep the cost controlled, team controlled guy. That's a really important thing. For OKC though, man, if I'm every team in the league, I'm calling them right now, trying to see if I could get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for literally whatever is on my roster for the most part. I think he, more so than Damian Lillard, becomes the most intriguing name out there if, as it's being reported, maybe he's gettable. It's going to take a lot, probably half your roster and all of your future first-round picks that you can trade. But he's a guy that I would trade any teams, treasure trove of assets for. I think that's how intriguing of a name he is to me out there on the trade market right now.
Yeah, well, now you start to look at, are there any other teams in there that might say, hey, if you really want to trade us something, like why wouldn't Toronto just be like, Toronto
they should call immediately, right? Yes.
If Detroit's like, what? Because look, Detroit says we're going to make the number 1 pick. We don't want to overthink this. We're going to make the number 1 pick. Houston's not in a position to get that much better. They're going to take Jalen Green, and Cleveland maybe, but I still don't think they're in the right timeline. Toronto's the next obvious one, right? And you can get Jalen Suggs, who we've already talked about.
He's Canadian too. Like, that's the other thing. There's like a lot of reasons to like this.
So you get Suggs, and you get more on your timeline. Toronto moves down 2 spots. They get, if you get Shai, who is a damn good point guard, as your replacement for Kyle Lowry, hello, thank you very much. Because I've been looking at them trading Pascal Siakam and number 4 in a bid to get one of the disgruntled, like Bradley Beal. If you flip it around and you get Shai and you still get the 6th pick, oh my God, throw a party. That would be the deal. If I'm looking at any deal on the market right now, that's one that has to happen if Shai is available at 4.
I just don't know if OKC would do it for 4. I think they just want Cade, and to me, he's kind of the most blue chip of the prospects out there, and I wonder if that's why they do that deal for him, and that's it, and not for any of these other guys. But look, I'm with you. That it makes sense, right? And if you're Toronto, you'll include other future first round picks in that deal to kind of make it a little bit more appealing, I think, to the Thunder. It doesn't have to just be, the 4th overall pick. You'll do it you'll include other things too.
I suppose, yeah, you can include a future pick, I guess, but I would think the trading of Shai is not an effort to get complete equal value back. It's an effort to say, we're not going to pay him in restricted free agency. Let's make a deal for him now, and let's get higher into this draft. I don't think getting Suggs at 4 is a real drop off. Like, yeah, Cade's number 1, but then you get, I don't know. And I might just be convinced by what the contrary attitude is. I don't know that the drop off down to 4 is as significant as people want to make it out to be. I know that Cade's the number 1 guy, but there are plenty of people out there who don't even think that Cade's the number 1 guy. And so I think that there's a deal to be done at 4. If nothing else, just to get OKC back on its original timeline, and a timeline that at least makes a little bit more sense for them, so they're not paying money out now or next season.
Yeah, no, look, and even if they sign him to an extension, which I think they would do, again, when are they going to be good? On the back end of that second contract that he's on, and that doesn't really do you a whole lot of good. So they got really screwed in the lottery and just not having things go their way. That kind of really threw off that timeline and not being able to get that kind of guy to pair with Shai to really start to build around for this rebuild. And it's kind of put them in an interesting spot. So they're going to potentially be active tomorrow night when it comes to the NBA draft. So we've also got to talk about the Lakers, because everyone kind of puts every player on them, but is that really realistic? But also they're in a really, really weird spot when it comes to Dennis Schröder. So we're going to talk about that coming up here next on Locked On NBA. Before we get to that, though, this episode is brought to you by rockauto.com. Your car is really important. You've got to keep it running. It's how you get to work. Public transportation might not be reliable. And frankly, you're not going to be able to get it into a mechanic right now. They're backed up for like 6 months. So if you repair your car or want to start repairing your car yourself to save some money, you can save even more money by going to rockauto.com. They carry every single part you might need, and you do not need to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership. I repair my cars. I just replaced an AC condenser that was $260 cheaper on rockauto.com than it was anywhere else. I can use that money for literally anything instead of having to just pay more for the same part. RockAuto.com is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years, and their prices are reliably low and the best I've seen out there, to be perfectly honest. They have everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, engine coolant. You need to replace the carpet in your car because you spilled your coffee on it one too many times. You can even do that. So go explore their easy-to-use website. Find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, continuing to just recap all the crazy rumors out there and seeing what's going to go down tomorrow night in the NBA draft. Yes, picks will be made, but players will also be traded, and sometimes that's what the more interesting thing is and what we're going to see tomorrow night as John's doing the live show. So hopefully we keep you on your, or the league keeps you on your toes a little bit.
Oh my God. We were just going through different scenarios, and basically Chad Ford is saying, yeah, that first round is just going to be kind of all over the place. I expect it to be kind of crazy. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I sign up for? It's basically just going to be, oh, there's a trade here. Oh, there's a trade there. We already talked about, 3 trade. We haven't even talked about the potential for what the Golden State Warriors are going to do with their picks. There are other picks. Guys want to go up to, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Memphis Grizzlies, so they're going to keep trading up. There's so many different things that can change on draft night.
Look, one team that's going to be very active, though, that I think I wanted to talk about because you're going to have fun making fun of them, and I want to look at it kind of seriously, is the...
How active are they going to be, really? The Los Angeles.
They're going to so they're going to get deals done, but they're going to try.
They're going to try.
This is the Lakers. They're going to try. They're going to be active as in, look, they're going to get an A for effort.
Sure. I mean, every GM gets an A for effort around this time, right? But the champagne hadn't even evaporated from Fiserv Forum before ESPN was trying to get Chris Paul onto the Lakers. And he has a $44 million player option. The Lakers have $5.9 million to spend in a taxpayer mid-level. And they're saying, is Chris Paul going to go join the Lakers? Are you kidding me? The whole storyline up until that point was, wow, Chris Paul can actually opt out of that and get another big deal for 2 years. And all of a sudden he lost. And it's like, well, now he's going to take 5.9 and go play with LeBron. They have been tied to Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Chris Paul, basically anybody that is available. And they have nothing to trade for him and no money to spend. Yet somehow the Lakers are here in every rumor.
Look, they had a disappointing season, to say the least, with the way it ended, despite injuries and all of that stuff. It was disappointing. They won the title the year before. They need to add some shooting and maybe a playmaker to that roster in some capacity. And it sounds like this comes from Woj. They've called everyone pretty much around the league offering Kyle Kuzma and KCP and maybe Talon Horton-Tucker involved in these trades. And no one is interested in those pieces whatsoever. Now, the latest report coming out right now about them is they're trying to, and this is quote, hustling to jump into the NBA draft lottery. You know, when you look at them, they have to kind of do something because they're in danger of losing Dennis Schröder. They offered him 4 for $84 in this offseason. He turned it down, and that looks a little bit crazy right now because he was pretty bad in the playoffs, so coming off of having COVID. But if he leaves, they still have the same amount of money that you just said, the $5.4 million to spend. They don't get any more, and they really need a guy like him, meaning they might have to overpay to keep Dennis Schröder or find someone who really likes Kyle Kuzma. And I don't think he has a ton of value around the league, but they are going to be calling everyone and trying to just do anything. And it feels like there's like a little bit of desperation there.
Let's look at this realistically. And I'm not trying to bust the Lakers' chops here at all, but where are the best scenarios for, let's just start with the ring chasers around the league. Brooklyn is a better scenario already. You might look at some of the other teams. Is Utah going to be a better scenario? Is going to Milwaukee, the defending champion, a better scenario? It's not necessarily a given, is my point, that the Lakers are first in line for whatever ring chasers that might be out there. Because you look at LeBron, he's getting older. You look at Anthony Davis, he's still injury prone. Okay, so let's just be realistic about this for a second. They're still high on the list, but not at the top of the list. So there is a little bit more desperation for the Lakers. And the best bet for me is to tell Dennis Schröder, you know what? We don't want you back. Forget it. We just don't want you. But also, the point guard market is oversaturated right now. There are
we just went over it.
We just went over much better options for a lot of teams looking to trade for a point guard. And if you miss out on that trade for a point guard, then there are going to be plenty of point guards out there that are free agents that are suddenly going to have to take that $5.9 million and whatever. So Schröder has a strong possibility of missing out on the big payday and then missing out on the mid-level payday for a year. And then what's he going to do? He's going to be stuck. And that's where the Lakers say, we still don't want you. So find a team that's going to give you whatever contract, and then we're going to sign and trade. And what you do is you turn Dennis Schröder into 2 useful players that you hopefully turn Schröder into 2 useful players, because bringing Schröder back at that point, not even worth it. Go sign one of the other cheaper point guards that's going to take some of the ball handling out of LeBron's hands to take the pressure off of him. But also,
and they need that very much so.
Yes. And so, but also, not be too ball dominant and take too much of the usage. And then hopefully with Schröder, you can bring back a couple of bench players to fill those shooting roles that you're hoping for, because frankly, there is no market for Kyle Kuzma. I mean, the market.
No, there isn't. It's really that simple. Like, there just isn't.
No, the market for Kuzma is so bad that I was thinking, hey, we'll give you Tristan Thompson for a backup center, and I guess we'll take Kyle Kuzma back. Like, that's what you're going to get for Kyle Kuzma.
Look, they don't have picks to trade. They're here in New Orleans, used in the Anthony Davis trade, which, look, they mortgaged their future. It paid off. They won the title. They're thrilled about that deal every single time. You make that trade every time.
Sure.
They could be potentially in play for a guy like Buddy Hield, because they're going to be willing to take on salary, even if it's bad salary and a bad contract, just to add the team, because they don't necessarily care.
That's a realistic option.
Yeah. And look, Sacramento doesn't want him. They want to move on. His deal's awful. It is.
And the Lakers don't
he's
care
a shooter
money.
And overpaying. And
right. The Lakers print money. So
they're probably also in play for, maybe if the Jazz are looking to dump Joe Ingles or Bogdanovich there, but also other teams are going to want those guys. They're usually players, and they can outbid the Lakers for it. For Ingles, that's going to be better than whatever the Lakers could do to try and bring him over there.
Yeah, look, the Lakers' options are just flat out limited. So Buddy Hield, they're going to have to roll the dice. That Buddy Hield in a locker room with LeBron is going to fall in line a little bit. And like I said, the Lakers just don't care about paying the luxury tax or anything like that. And if they don't hard cap themselves, they're going to be fine. But that's the move. Like those are going to be
probably.
That's going to be it. Hey, look, the bottom line, like you said, they got Anthony Davis. They won a title. COVID hit, and they benefited. It's not a knock on them. They benefited by getting LeBron and Davis a little extra rest. They had a good playoff run. They won the title. Congratulations. Everybody benefited from some rest, but they really did. But the short turnaround hurt them the second time around. So they didn't benefit the following year, and it cost them. And so maybe they could have had 2 titles. They got one of the 2. Now they're in trouble. Now they're just in trouble because LeBron's a little bit older, and they're financially they're out of options. They've got nothing left. We're teetering on the edge of I'm not saying rebuild, but there's only so much time left on those deals. LeBron's only got 2 years left on his deals. And then what? You got nothing left. You got nothing. You're out of cash. Your chip stack's low. You can't. Who are you going to go all in with?
No, look, I'm with you. It's going to be interesting, but they're going to be trying. And look, we've covered a ton of names here, and we're about to wrap up the show. And as you said, we didn't even touch on the Warriors on this. We didn't get into Damian Lillard. We didn't really get into Bradley Beal. It feels like things could happen, and these things kind of come out of nowhere. That Pelicans-Memphis trade, while brewing, kind of broke in a bigger way than I think anyone, including myself, was really expecting. I hope we get a ton of this tomorrow, and we just get like a crazy time, because it's a lot of fun when there's a whole bunch of different things going on around the league. So, John, before we wrap up here, again, tell everyone about the show tomorrow night.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this Thursday night show where it's all going to be breaking while I'm on TV with Chad Ford and Rafael Barlow. We know Chad is the best of the best when it comes to draft analysis. Rafael Barlow is our high upside, superstar on the Locked On NBA Draft Show, and we've got all of our local experts chiming in as their picks are made. So analysis like crazy, and analysis that you're not going to find anywhere else. It starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, an hour before the draft starts, streaming on the Locked On NBA YouTube page, Roku, Amazon Fire Stick. So it's available in a lot of places. It's a national broadcast brought to you by Built Bar, and it's just going to be unparalleled coverage of the NBA draft.
No, it's going to be a fun night. There's going to be a lot going on. Make sure you follow it along with the Locked On NBA YouTube page where you might be watching the show right now. If you're listening on the podcast, go subscribe. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to want to know what's going on, and we're going to be breaking down everything. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NBA on Wednesdays. I'm your usual co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Corrales, at RedsArmy_John on Twitter, and host of the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thank you all for listening. Going to be a fun next couple of days, and we'll be back with you all next week.